Maybe I should push this whole thing over this way. Oops. Okay. There it is. Yes, I can't. My clerical shirt is somewhere. And I'm not going to put another one on and get it all sweaty just for this. No. And, okay.
Casual Tuesday.
Yes, Casual Tuesday, because I have my Holy Land crucifix here. So we're looking at the book of Proverbs, and this is we're on the 13th chapter of the book of Proverbs. So let's pray in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. You can pray our prayer of the Scriptures. Blessed Lord, who have caused all holy Scriptures to be written for our learning, grant that we may wisely hear them, read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest them, that by the patience, comfort of your holy word, we may embrace and ever hold fast to the blessed hope of everlasting life, which you have given us in our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. So, chapter 13. So, much of the context of this it might be just a literary device, but of a father instructing his son, and especially a son, even Solomon instructing one of his sons in how to live in court and all this stuff. So it's just a wise son loves correction. Well, who loves correction? For the most part, yeah. But the more we become detached, and the more we mature, the more we like authentic correction. Not people, because there are people who quote unquote correct you when they're totally off and they're wrong. So the polite thing is to say, well, thank you, and smile about that. But then, of course, it's how correction is given often, especially to adults. If it's done in a haughty manner, I know everything and you are just stupid, and I will. Because that doesn't cultivate receptivity, shall we say, that attitude. So, but correct. We need advice. I like advice, but I don't like. I don't like slander, and I don't like being attacked, of course. And but the older I get, the more I say. But some people, as it did, because often people will reveal more of themselves than they will about you in some of this stuff. So, and that's the thing, to be detached from that and let that go. And when people shoot fiery darts at you, we should be wearing the armor of the whole armor of the Lord. And you don't examine a fiery dart and pull it out with your hand while it's burning and look at it. You let it go out first. So you often need to cool off with that. And that's a good advice and things. When you have a fight, but something like, especially couples and stuff like that, it's often good to say, agree beforehand. If it gets too hot, we're going to stop and then cool off, and then come back. And then we may have even forgotten what the whole thing was about at the time of it. But then you cool off. And but remember the saying that I'm told is from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam about there are two things that cannot be undone: an arrow shot from the bow and a word shot from the mouth. So we can say, I'm sorry, or whatever, but there's still this thing. Or even, I didn't really mean it, but then the person say, inside me saying, oh, you really did mean it. This is what you don't mean. That's what, so it's hard. So a son loves correction, but the scoffer heeds no rebuke. So anyone have anything to say? And so so we should. The more people inflate their egos, it's like a balloon, or it becomes more sensitive. If you want to pop a balloon, you don't take the air out; you put more air in, And that's true with our egos when we inflate our ego. And they become swollen, to use another image. So if something's swollen, it's very sensitive. So people, the bigger the ego, the more swollen it is, the more sensitive they are, and the more quote unquote sensitive, but self-sensitive, and even looking for offense, which is the au courant thing now, that I'm offended. But I tell people, offend me, go ahead. I'm not 4 years old. You may think I'm 4 years old, but I am not. But don't slander me, and needless attacking is also. But if you say something, that you mean or something like that, or even something you don't mean. So I remember one time this woman. I knew more French then than I know now, but I obviously didn't know enough. So I wanted to say to this woman, "You have good taste." But instead of goo, I said gal. Gal is snout. And she did have a big nose, as it turned out. So I said, I would just say you have a great taste. And I said, you have a great nose. You have a great snout. And then she just smiled, because she knew I wasn't, to put it mildly, exactly fluent in French. So anyway, verse 2, from the fruit of the mouth one enjoys good things, but from the throat of the treacherous comes violence. And many of these proverbs is a contrast. So this is the fruit, like a good fruit, like a biting into a nice, luscious peach, stuff like that. Good words, helpful words, all of that. As I said, my mother always said, at least once a day, give a compliment to somebody. Stuff like that. So it's like, well, your toupee is really sticking on your head today, or something like that, whatever, is meant to be. Or did I ever tell you about this religious, a wonderful person, but she always said basically hilarious things. In fact, she said that to me. She goes, "You're so funny, even when you don't mean to be." But one time she said, after this funeral, she goes, "Oh, you celebrate such a beautiful funeral. It's too bad you can't do your own." So I say, I hope you're not hoping that I should be dead, or something like that. I said, no. She was... And in her order, the sisters had stopped wearing veils, and she always wore a veil. She said, this means, I have this consecrated life. So I said, whether people like it or not, I'm good with it. So, from the throat of the treacherous comes violence. So that's it. Like an Othello in Shakespeare, how he manipulates everything to the his name just escapes me. Well, Othello was married to this beautiful woman, and he was trying to sow suspicion in Othello about this stuff like that. And in the end, Othello kills his wife because of what was his name? It's a Spanish name. I can't remember.
I was just reading about it too.
Reading Othello?
Well, I looked it up because there was a guy at work who had a beard that looked like someone called him Othello. I looked it up.
Oh yeah. What's his name? It's a Spanish. I can't think of it. But anyway,
it was someone like her too, and
and all this other, but all this stuff. Yeah. So he wanted to say all this stuff. Yeah. And Othello was an outsider, and all this stuff because he was North African, and all this stuff. So but the mouth of the treacherous, so the treachery of that, in that case, brings violence. The murder of his wife. Mm-hmm. So those who guard their mouths preserve themselves. So if you say, think before you speak. They say, respond rather than react. Mm-hmm. So on the internet too, because I'm on these things defending Catholicism and stuff, and you get these fundamentalists, either whether fundamentalist Muslim or fundamentalist Protestants, who are often really nasty. And and stuff like that. But so and they quote unquote they might be sincere. You're going to hell and all this stuff. I'm going to hell and all that. So so I don't want to respond and say the same to you, Buster. Enjoy that trip. No, but no, you try to respond more positively. Although sarcasm is useful at times. But anyway, but in fact, I was listening yesterday to The Journey Home, and this guy on it was an apologist, and he was saying, he said, we have to control ourselves in this, he said, because we don't want to act the same way that these people are to us. You want to, bring clarification, communication, rather than, quote unquote, winning a fight. It's just, it only makes the loser resentful, and then of course often the person does, and more defensive and all this other stuff. So, but giving the arguments in sometimes bluntly, but indirectly, but with trying to put yourself in the other person's place. What if I were raised with this or whatever like that? And often on the island, you have no idea where these people are coming from, what they've been through, or whatever like that. And the worst ones are the quote-unquote ex-Catholics. I used to be a Catholic, and they come up with the most incredible nonsense. So they're given stuff that people, anti-Catholics, just tell them, and they suck it up because they're so poorly instructed. So poorly instructed and all this stuff. So then it's up to you, because there aren't enough clergy. There never were, because it has to be. We have to learn our faith. We have to know what it. Because in some ways, there's nothing worse than a person who wants to be a defender of the faith and he, doesn't know. Like on this one thing, this person who was a fundamentalist, who said, that he, quote unquote, in all love, he said, well, you Catholics are going to hell and all this stuff. Well, this other person, took it in Catholic and said, basically, well, you're going to hell, and blah, 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 and put the little meme that looks like a chocolate ice cream cone, but it's not, that's not what it is. Stuff like that, the person put that, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful. And then, of course, it helps the other person think, not think of what that person said, but it's you're the one who's the, because you've reacted instead of responded to all of this. So, those who open wide their lips bring ruin. Of course, there are other ways. I was just thinking of that. As I ate half a loaf of bread today, I have to confess. I was going to said, well, we didn't have the Dave's bread. So I said, well, there was this white bread, and it was really luscious. And then I ate, and I also said, I'm not going to sit at the kitchen table and read because then I'll want to eat, and it's easy just to. So I'll go into the living room, but I didn't do it. So then, anyway, my OA confessions, and anyway, so the appetite of the sluggard craves but has nothing. So, because he's lazy and he doesn't have anything, so he has all of these wants and all of these things, but that he can't have them because he didn't work and all this. He didn't save, did all these other things that you have to do. And of course, that's one of the things. Look to the ant, thou sluggard, and it's not to be lazy. Because if he's talking to a teenager, that's that may be why he's bringing that up. But anyway, but the appetite of the diligent is amply satisfied. So you have your plans, but you're a hard worker and a good worker, and you keep at it, you persevere. You get that. So number 5, verse 5. The just hate deceitful words, but the wicked are odious and disgraceful, because they love deceitful words. Because they don't just like misinformation. They like disinformation about their rivals. So to often say, and sometimes these people start off with misinformation, but then they get so caught up in it, either their envy, resentment, vindictiveness, or whatever, and they go into disinformation. They begin to tell half truths and a lie. So the devil doesn't like a total lie, because he likes something with enough truth to have the bait swallowed, but the rest lie. But the conclusion is a lie. To have all this stuff into that. So, but as who was it? Goebbels, I think it said, if you tell a lie long enough and loudly enough, it will be believed. So, if the wicked are odious, and disgraceful means hateful. Because with my name, Methodius, so people thought my name was Matt, that was my first name, and Odious was my last name. But anyway, so that's like a character in Harry Potter or something. The wicked are odious and disgraceful, and literally disgraceful, which is out of grace, out of the grace of God. Justice guards one who walks honestly. Now remember, walking isn't talking about putting one foot ahead of the other. It's about how you're living. That's what to walk, and you walk in the straight path. So that it was talking about. Justice guards one who walks honestly, but sin leads the wicked astray. And then there's rationalization with that. So you do something you know is wrong, but pride gets in the way. And so you can't admit that I can't admit I did something wrong. So then I try or make it. And first, often they start out, take slavery, for example, in this country. So it was out of greed and sloth that it was established here. And they said, well, other people's doing it and all this stuff, and these people are not our equals or whatever like that. And we're doing them a favor, some of the which was not obviously true. But they said, oh, we'll give them Christianity. But often when they brought them to Anglo-America, they didn't do that. They didn't want, they said, oh, they'll make them think. You know, they talk about Moses liberating them. That's maybe not be a good idea. So, and then as time went on, you know, they became more and more dependent on it, as in that doing you know, the white indentured service were dying off in the heat and stuff like that. Let's say in the Caribbean, so but the people from the tropical were adapted to that. So that was another rationalization, because they said, well, they're geared to this. This is what they're geared to, and more rationalizations went on. So when our country was started, because it was obviously, you know, all men are created, slavery obviously was not compatible with that. And so people said, well, we can't stop it now or the economy will collapse. So we'll have to gradually get off of the, so it's put in the Constitution and all these things. But then by the time of the Civil War, they were saying it was a positive good in doing that. So you see this with abortion. So, you know, at first, the advocates of abortion said, well, we only want it for the hard cases, and we want to prevent, you know, back alley abortions and things like this. And even into the 90s, even to the 2000s, often the advocates are saying, oh, we want it to be rare. We want it to be rare. We want it to be safe. Of course, not safe for the baby, but they're not going to call a baby, because language is very important to this. It's thing like slavery. So you can call, instead of calling them slaves, you say servant or something like that, and then to dehumanize them, and so if you do that, so that would make. So the same is true in abortion. So because you say fetal stage homicide, to say that's it's the fetal child is human and all that. But of course, if once you admit that and all this stuff, then you can't. It's harder to rationalize it. To say, oh, it's just like removing your a toenail or something like that. That would be the attitude. So, well, the toenail doesn't grow up. It's the only difference usually in 90+ percentage of the abortions between the aborted baby and me and you is nutrition and time, and we weren't killed. So, and of course there are probably that book you gave on abortion that I forget what the title of it by is it Trent Lott?
Oh yeah.
Not Trent Lott.
What was it?
Whoever it was. Oh, anyway, whoever it was.
Yeah.
But that was it. You're saying like coming off a descent, and don't get hot under the collar over it. We're dealing with, as I say, fetal stage homicide, which
Trent
Horn. That's it. Which I think it's I swore it must be a stage name because the Council of Trent, and then and broadcasting that or something. But actually, it may be his real name. I don't know. So, but anyway, that one was saying you're using the more use the question style rather than something that would be taken right off as an accusation or something like that. But although sometimes you have to be direct. I think it was Archbishop Pell who said to liberal, quote unquote, they were Protestant, but they were abortion advocates. And he said, one cannot advocate abortion and have faith in the incarnation. So you can believe, yeah, you can believe anything and not, have it consistent with your life. But you can't have faith in the incarnation. He said, because you would have been the first person to, quote unquote, advise Mary to, quote unquote, get rid of it. Like that. So that God, the eternal Word, took on and was in the womb of Mary and was helpless in his humanity. So you go on with that, but one acts rich but has nothing. So it's like what was it? Keeping Up Appearances. Do you remember that British show? With that. Well, that was so you wanted people to think that they were, wealthy, and they were all, and eldest of Mrs. Bucket. Bouquet, yes. Bouquet, yes. And all this stuff. So, but you can get all this stuff. So one acts rich but has nothing. Another acts poor but has great wealth. So that so you act like an ordinary person, and even if you have this thing, rather than to be a slave of fashion and all that stuff would go up. No, I'm not looking at anybody. No, but anyway. But I'm talking about extremes now and wasting vast amounts of money. But anyway, to live frugally, even though there was this one woman who was. She was wealthy, but she worked and all, and people didn't know that. People didn't know she had this. And then, but she was giving her money for charity and using a lot of stuff for things, and especially in Africa and various other stuff like that. And when she died, when it found out, she had left $1 million to some, I think. After school program or something like that for children or something, or preschool program for children. That people are absolutely amazing, because she lived a simple life. She didn't,
There was a woman that donated to Holy Family.
Yeah.
She was single and she just had a sister, and her sister died before her.
Yeah.
She left about $1 million.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. She
you do.
She lived her life.
Yeah, it was frugal. So
peaceful.
Yeah.
It's like Saint
Right?
Saints Pinion and Melanie, Melanie the younger, who were it was an arranged marriages when they were children, but it was a corporate merger. Because all these vast estates that they ended up being the heirs to, so their relatives did this stuff so like that. But Melanie especially had been influenced by her great aunt, whom I thought was extremely eccentric, who went off basically to go from monastery to monastery and learn things and stuff like that. And she could have had all this wealth and stuff like that, but she didn't. In fact, their relatives tried to stop them once they were using their money and stuff like that. So they said, we're going to live simply. We're not going to have, wear silk. We're not going to have, they freed the slaves. They used their money for ransoming people who were captured by pirates and all this stuff. People fleeing barbarians, all sorts of things like that. Hi there. Hi, Rita. You're tired. Yeah, if you fall asleep during it, I won't say anything.
You won't say anything.
I won't turn the camera on to you. Oh, the tomatoes, the little tomatoes. Home-grown tomatoes. Then so they did that. They lived their life frugally, and they had the and they didn't even know how much properties they had and all this stuff, but they kept doing it. But apparently they had good investments because things went well. So they used it to establishing monasteries, establishing schools, establishing hospitals, ransoming captives. In fact, they were on a boat and their boat was captured by vandals. So she said, Melanie said, what's your price for me? And she said, I will pay for everyone on the boat. Because otherwise the people would be taken off into slavery or something like that. So they did that. So we see that. So that's really important there to have that. So as my uncle used to say, he said, you either strive to live what you believe, or you will strive to believe what you live. So all that, like, you have this shout your abortion stuff, and now as if the abortion is, and they don't even use the terminology of abortion. No, they don't even. They'll have all this nice sounding stuff, reproductive rights and health. They'll say health, women's health, which is the opposite. And often, before they said we wanted to be safe. Now they say, oh, just do it on your own, or whatever. Take this stuff. But before they would say, oh no, you have to all this has to be really supervised, everything. So anyway, yes, 742, number 13:8. Yes, people's riches serve as a ransom for their lives. So think of Saint Melody there with that. But the poor do not even hear a threat. So all that, so they don't.
I'm going to cut just get glasses.
Oh, that's okay. The light of the just gives joy, but the lamp of the wicked goes out. So, and I think with this of Jesus' parable of the wise and foolish virgins. I remember when I was a child, when I first heard this preached or read in the gospel, because they read the gospel at the Mass. The Mass was in Latin, but they would read the gospel in English. And we had what they call a dialogue Mass for the children. The whole church answered, like the altar boys do with the altar boys. In Latin, you'd answer, "In tui voluntari Deum qui latificatum." So you said all this. And you sang the Sanctus and the Agnus Dei to the same tune that we use at weekday Mass, as it is now, the Gregorian tune. But I remember this priest, I read about the wise and the foolish virgin, and I said, why didn't they all blow it out and leave one burning? And then they could go out. But of course, it's when you try to make these things, quote unquote, logical, you blow the whole parable. Because it's not about being economic with your olive oil, which people would be then. But it was about being filled with grace and responding to this, and rather than let it go out, let your life dissipate as it go away. So many people do that. They just they don't charge into lives of sin. They just sort of slide into it. Especially now with the profound decadence, and which is not for an elite now. It's supposed to be for everybody. So and all the sexual libertinism and all sorts of stuff like that. And then, of course, if you have to be free to have sex with anybody you want, a man or woman, and you get pregnant, well, of course, you should not have to take responsibility for that. You can just, quote unquote, get rid of it. That whole attitude, and which is really pushed today, like to, even like 20 years ago, I never thought it would be this bad. But I said, well, people won't tolerate it, but people do and applaud it, stuff like that, because people have been indoctrinated in this for a generation and all that. That's the way it is. The lamp of the wicked goes out. The stupid sow discord by their insolence. So that's it. So arrogance, it's not diplomatic. It's that so arrogant people alienate people. Now, there are some people who quote unquote admire arrogance. We see this in politics, but they don't admire it in relation to themselves. If people are arrogant, so they don't like that, and they don't admire it, and it's only someone who's morally stupid. So remember, the fool is the moral fool when he talks about it. It's not someone who doesn't have sense to come in out of the rain. Because my years, I used to love to run in the rain. I'd go out into the rain. But now, no. Maybe I've had more sense than I've grown older. But the moral fool, because there are people who are quite clever, but they ruin their lives. It's often because of bad, immoral choices.
Stupidity.
Yes, yeah, spiritual stupidity, moral stupidity. Yeah. So, so we often think of docile as being just can be led around and all that, but docile comes from docere, to teach. So the opposite of that, this Cistercian monk pointed out to me one time, not personally to me, but so the opposite of docility is stupidity. It's not assertiveness or whatever, like stupidity, and that's you can't learn. You can't, and without humility, you're never really going to learn. And humility is the one virtue that can prevent the other virtues from decaying. Because then you'll repent. You'll know you need improvement and all this other stuff with the humility. So, but wisdom is with those who take counsel. Again, the advice you want to, but the advice of. But advice that you have the sense enough to weigh. So rather than to go because I think we all know people who do the thing that the last person told them to do. No matter how foolish it is. It's something that just are easily led off, and that's problematic. Wealth, one quickly dwindles away. So you're like, one on a wild investing, in perilous investing. So, I won this windfall, and then it's gone. Or wealth, one quickly dwindles away, but gathered little by little it grows. With the underlying thing there of the frugality, of the saving, of taking personal responsibility and these things and stuff like that. So, not living beyond your means and the like. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And that's, you hear that around, I used to hear it, I don't know. But most people are biblically illiterate, so they don't, not only do people not know that things are from the Bible, they often never heard it. I remember this guy who was a professor and he had a student who had never heard of Shakespeare. He had this English. This guy had gone all the way through high school and all this stuff and was in college. Had never even heard of Shakespeare. And then lines you'd say, like et tu brute, and people would know that, but they would just look at you now because of the cultural illiteracy of that's around, and it's applauded because they say, why do you want to know about what old dead white men said or something? That's the inverted racism often involves in all of that stuff, which it just makes racism is the other way. So a Christian cannot tolerate racism of any sort. Because the temptation is always to put your own kind ahead and then dehumanize the other people. But that's not the way it is. That's why I like to put out all the Madonnas in the church, so all different races, different ethnicities, and a Christ too, an African Christ, a Korean Christ, a Japanese Christ, Chinese Christ, an Irish Christ, the little child Jesus is Northern European, and stuff like that. Mestizo, the Christ the High Priest is mixed Native American and Spanish, or something like that. That the looks, and that the Egyptian Dawn and Child look Egyptian, all of that stuff. Of the universality of this. And they said, well, Jesus didn't look like that. And I said, do you think he looked like the pictures that you have? You often have that and stuff, yeah. So I told you about the Christmas carol that some people now say, it's banned because they say it's racist, but it's actually the opposite of racist. Some children see him lily white. Did you ever hear that one? Some children see him lily white, the baby Jesus born this night. Some children see him lily white, with tresses long and fair. Some children see him black as night. The Lord of heaven, so filled with light. Some children see him bronzed and browned. Our God to earth with love come down. And it goes on with different things like that. But some of the people on the left, they say, oh no, that's terrible, that's racist, because it says black as night, and it has to rhyme with light, whatever, like and this, I don't know, it's exasperating. But it's the opposite of racism. So in the last stanza was, each child sees in this child's face his own, but filled with heavenly grace. All this stuff. So, and you can find it on YouTube, sung by Tennessee Ernie Ford, with Timmy from Lassie on his lap. Now, you wouldn't have a kid on his lap, and all this stuff. So anyway, and so you can find it on YouTube. You remember Tennessee Ernie Ford if you're my age.
What was the name of the song again?
Some children see him lily white. Sometimes it's some children. I have the words somewhere too, and you will also find it on. Just type it. You can find the words.
Yeah.
They will come up
Yeah.
for that. So, yeah. But disparaging people that aren't your own group. So that people say all X's, some group that you don't belong to, are Y. Some negative thing, so people will do that about their other groups, and that's bigotry. That's the heart of bigotry. So, so what verse? 13. But a wish fulfilled is a tree of life. So we're doing that. So. But of course, in God, if the virtue of hope, if it's in God the virtue of hope, it's in a sense, you persevere, because you know in hope, in faith, in love, that it will be fulfilled, that God will keep his promises, that God is love, and that God is merciful, and God, all this stuff, and to persevere in grace. Whoever despises the word must pay for it. So if you don't take a warning, this Irish joke of this person is, these Irish people are out, and then these tourists are driving by, and they're driving fairly fast, and this person it was saying, cow, 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 and they said, how insulting they are to call me a cow, but then bang, they hit a cow on the road, just like that, without not paying attention. So
But what were they actually saying?
cow. The cow is in the road.
Oh.
So they hit the cow. There's another version to that is this little country church is there, and this country road, and this guy again is driving fast down it, and this person is the minister is out there, and he's waving, and he said, "The end is near, the end is near," and he said, "Oh, those fanatics!" But then you heard screech. It was the road had ended. The road ended. So. Yeah. But whoever reveres the command will be rewarded, the command of God. So the command. Remember when we were doing the Psalms, we had Psalm 119 on the law, on the commandments, how I love your law and all this stuff. If I live by the commandments, then I'll have a responsible life. I'll have a life of integrity. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, turning one from the snares of death. But often people don't want to pay attention to this. They will rationalize their vices, and even death-dealing vices. They won't pay attention because of the allure of hedonism, as they, and the irritation of self-discipline. As I know, as I was saying, I had eaten this bread, and I was going to. Well, the healthy bread wasn't there, so I said, "Well, I'll have one piece," but I didn't. And so, but I needed that self-discipline, and not just the willpower, but the won't power. So the teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, turning one from the snares of death. Good sense brings favor, but the way of the faithless is their ruin. Again, if you have anything to say about these, just say it. The shrewd always act prudently. But of course, the shrewd here isn't shrewd. Often we think of shrewd in the deceptive thing, like someone's shrewd, clever to pull wool over people's eyes, which is itchy. But here, but it isn't. This is the people who are sensible, know right from wrong and stuff like that. But the foolish parade folly. So you see this literally nowadays with that. So, and St. Paul said the same thing. He said the things that people should be ashamed to do in the dark, and they boast of it in public. So, as if it's liberating, they're liberated, but licentiousness is an even greater slavery than a slavery from the outside. It's an inner slavery. A wicked messenger brings on disaster, So the wicked messenger he's not, bringing bad news. He's bringing, he's wicked, he's lying. So to do this, to bring discord or whatever on this stuff, or even to tell people, oh, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, when they should be worrying about it. There was this town by a volcano in the Andes, and they knew that there was a problem with this volcano. It was going, and it was a glacier on the volcano, making it even worse. So there'd be this lahar, so with all the mud and all the ash and everything would be caught up in this flood, and the flood would just come down. So instead of getting on the radio and telling people to evacuate, they just played music. Because they didn't want to be involved, and hundreds of people were killed in this town because it just swept through and knocked buildings down and everything like that. And it was like drowning in cement in some of these things. So they didn't say it because they didn't want quote unquote a panic and all this other stuff and whatever. But
did those people die themselves?
oh no, they were far away. They knew about this was happening. That the scientists told them that this was happening, and but they didn't broadcast it. So, but a trustworthy envoy is a healing remedy. So even if it's something I don't want to hear, if I need to hear it, if it's trustworthy, if it's truthful. But of course, truth not given in love is defective, because it's not going to really be true. It might be some facts, but it's not going to be there. If you usually things he uses a sword against people, because there are people who look at people and they look for their chinks, and then they shoot at them, and they say, you're this, that, all of that, or even not, even things. So it's they say things. And there are people who collect weapons. I don't mean literal weapons. I mean, like, you say something and they'll store it away. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
It's for a rainy day.
Yes. Yeah, that was like, there was this, it was a gum, remember gum? It used to have little comics in it. And there was one, Nancy, the Nancy. So there was this, I think it was Spike was the kid who had, he had bubble gum. He had the hair coming out. So in the winter, Nancy's going by and he has snowballs and he throws them at her. So what she does is she makes snowballs, she puts it in the freezer. And then after all the snow is gone away, she's at the window with her snowballs, and Spike or whatever his name is coming by, and we know what she's going to do. And so he can't pick up one and throw it at her. So so she collected this. So there were people who are offense collectors, I call them, and people I call the professionally annoyed. They're always constantly complaining about everything like that, and all that, and it inflates their egos or whatever. And they're all to do it to say, because all of y'all are stupid, and I'm smart, and I have a so I have a sharp tongue. But the thing is that's the problem with the sharp tongue. No, there are times when you can be quite, like Saint Jerome, when he was very well educated, and he could be sharp, but often he said it was in defense of the faith, but it wasn't always helpful. And he always seemed to be getting in fights with people over things like that. But he was a saint because he was, he struggled with this. He had a struggle. And so, in fact, people like that because if you think of, because often saints saints' lives, hagiography, it's as if, they never had any problems, or what problems they had, they never felt bad about it, or something, that they were constantly in ecstasy. But that was just not the case. So like one of the saints we talked about today, St. Mary MacKillop, what she went through, it wasn't, the injustice, because she didn't settle for the injustice against her. She ended up going to the Pope, and by the grace of God, getting an audience with the Pope at the time. This was in the 1890s, I think it was. And, she was sided with. But the Pope could have gone against her or something. You could have, like, Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc wasn't killed by anti-Christians. She was killed by Christians, and she was condemned by bishops. It was a political thing. The Burgundian bishops were on the side of the English, and she was on the side of the French, so they wanted to get her as a witch or all this other stuff. And I might sneeze, so get ready. You know what my sneezes are like. It won't come now that it's been warned.
Has to surprise you.
Yes, it wants to surprise you.
I'll jump.
Yeah. Well, anyway, especially when I have the microphone on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, my sneezes with the microphone. So, poverty and shame befall those who let go of discipline. All this, you have to work, you have to get up and go to work, you have to do this, you have to discipline yourself, you have to study, all of these things. But those who hold on to reproof receive honor. So this is the advice that you're given, and you may not like it, but you have to. When you're honest with yourself, and you say, "Well, yeah, that's good. I'm going to act on that." Desire fulfills delight. Desire fulfilled delights the soul, but it depends on what the desire is, because a lot of desires are they grow. They don't. Greed for power. So that doesn't. The more power these folk get, the more they want. It's not, and the same often with wealth. Like all of these multi-billionaires, and they just don't have enough. They have to have more and more and more and more, and often they don't care how they get it. So that's it. So someone once said the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but someone corrected that and said, "Oh no, the road to hell is paved with rationalizations, not with good intentions." So, and especially when you know it's not true, but so if you're corrected and you know it's true, and you just respond in anger instead of responding in conversion, and you hunker down even more. So that's the difference between perseverance and stubbornness. Because stubbornness can be just, I'm stuck in the mud, but no one's going to tell me I'm stuck in the mud. So, and I just keep on sinking into the mud. That's stubbornness. But perseverance is in something that's good. You keep on going in something that's good. So, desire fulfilled delights the soul. But that's really, the one that really delights the soul is the desire for God. And the more and more. And so you're satisfied, but at the same time you just want more. But not like the greedy. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you, St. Augustine wrote. But turning from evil is an abomination to fools. And again, the fool is the moral fool. So, and you're going to instead of saying, well, just rationalizing this, just say, I need to do this or something like that, and just let off a little, be a little tolerant about it, until you come to the point that everyone has to affirm it. What I'm doing is good. So you have to affirm that I'm committing an abortion. You have to affirm that I'm making billions through sweatshops. You have to affirm this, that it's not just all, because the more powerful the person is, the more pressure there is to for the person to get his way, or even to the point of murder. Like, take Henry VIII. Please, take him. But, so he was incredibly greedy, murderously greedy, and a wastrel as well, because he had to get his way. But one of the things was he was coddled in that through much of his life, and he became king early, I think at 17 or something. And all the people around him were yes men and all this stuff. So he just got very quickly into judicial murder, and it was always judicial murder. He always wanted it to be legal. Someone would be arrested for treason or something like that, and the trial would be manipulated. And more and on it went. And so, when he wanted to get rid of his wife, and she wouldn't go quietly, and so not only did people have to not oppose this, they had to affirm it. So everyone over 21, every male over 21, had to affirm that Anne Boleyn was the real queen, and the king, and that the king was the supreme head of the church, and all this would go on. All that. If you didn't, then you ended up like Thomas More, who was quiet about it. So everybody knew what he meant, but he was quiet. Unlike Bishop Fisher, who told him right off. But he couldn't abide that. Henry VIII couldn't abide it. He had to be his. Everyone had to go along with it, which is often the case if your conscience bothers you. Although he was a radical narcissist, so I don't know if his conscience really bothered him. So he was always right. So as they say, she thought she found Mr. Right, but then she discovered that his first name was Always.
Always.
Walk with the wise, and you will become wise. But the companion of fools fares badly. So they always say, have good companions, not bad companions, because they'll bring you into, or even get you in trouble, even if you don't do anything. Mm-hmm. So, misfortune pursues sinners, but the just shall be recompensed with good. So remember, most of this is before they knew about a full revelation of life after death. So the whole Deuteronomic theology of you'll be rewarded in this life and stuff, but that is often not the case. So, but you'll be rewarded in the reality of heaven, and you'll be punished. So people say, well, I got through this life, and I did all this stuff, and I got away with it. So there's no God, or God's on my side, which is even worse than saying there's no God, because that makes God, try to make God complicit in evil. So, the companion of fools fares badly. Misfortune pursues sinners, but the just shall be recompensed with good. And we believe that, we see that, as Jesus said, whoever has faith in me, even if he dies, shall live, and whoever lives in his faith in me will never perish. The good leave an inheritance to their children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the just. So that would be nice if that were always true, but it ultimately is true in the justice of God. The tillage of the poor yields abundant food, but possessions are swept away for lack of justice. Even that, but for lack of justice, people lose things. So, whoever spares the rod, this is the one. Whoever spares the rod spoils the child. You've heard that. Now, and I told you about the Sumerian character for school was to beat. That was just the physical punishment corporal punishment was just part of education. So they thought that's the way, and also that you should beat your children, and that will make them.
Well, a little bit of it was okay, but when you went overboard.
Oh yeah. And the problem is a lot of these, as they say, undisciplined disciplinarians. So they're enraged and they beat their children. It's awful.
And now there's nothing.
Well, now it can be the opposite abuse. Like letting kids, get away with everything is a form of child abuse also.
You say
Worse.
something to a child now or whatever, and they're threatening to call the cops.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Or there, yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. 7 and 8 and 9.
Oh yeah. And they're
And they're-
it's inculcated in them. Yeah. It's inculcated that that I'm the center of the universe, and then I can do anything I want.
You can't touch me, but I can do whatever because I'm a child.
Yeah, or whatever. And they have that same attitude. They keep that attitude up to when they become chronological adults and they don't mature. And they have that thing, and they wreck their lives, and they wreck other people's lives, and they manipulate people and all that. It's terrible.
And here we have the world.
We have what?
Now we have the world. They grew up and there they are.
Yeah,
Up there. This is what we got.
yeah.
A world of them. All over the place. All over. It's been going on for years. And now they're growing
So
up.
in the confusion of license with freedom.
Yeah.
So if I do anything I want, but of course, often my greeds don't make me happy, and I say, well, that's a little more, and a little more, and a little more, and the world owes me a living from everything. Yeah? So the world is a force, Nature is a force. Nature doesn't owe you anything. But God is not just a force. God really loves you, and you can cooperate with God, or you can run in the other direction. You're free to do that.
Thank God there's a God. He'll do it sooner or later.
Whoever spares the rod hates the child, but whoever loves will apply discipline. Well, discipline is one thing, but the violence of it, that's, yeah. So, but
I always loved the discipline of the children. Or was it? You go sit in a chair in the corner. Time out.
Oh,
Time
yeah.
out. Big deal.
So what? All my mother had to do was look at me.
But see,
That we would, yeah. She didn't have to say anything. You knew you had to stop, or whatever it was.
the tone of the
Yeah.
whatever.
But it wasn't even the tone. It was just to look.
Be like,
She would just look.
be like James.
Yeah. If my mother said my whole name, that was bad.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Everybody, that's
But rarely, often, she would just look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had to. So, and especially if you knew you did something
I do
wrong.
it with the grandchildren. If I say the last name, the other one looks at me I said, Natalie Berry? She's like, Martin. Yeah, she knows right away by that tone.
Yeah.
And that's that.
And I never liked it if my mother said, instead of Jimmy, she said James. That was not good.
Oh,
Yeah.
she said the whole name.
And the whole name, yes. James Joseph.
Oh, it's the same
O'Driscoll.
in our house.
Yeah.
The whole name. Because it's not Rose, it's Rosemary.
Okay.
So to this day, I say, no, just call me Rose.
There
Because
you
you're
go.
the most.
That's right, sure.
It was so full.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you were getting in love.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When the just eat, their hunger is appeased. But the belly of the wicked suffers want because it's never satisfied. So I want more power. I want more money. I want more of this. I want more pleasure. I want blah, 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 blah. And there's never satisfied because it's an endless pit of, giving into that. So, but the discipline is what helps. So we'll stop there. And I had a piece of paper in this. Do you have an extra paper? I'll have an extra one. Yes, I
Yeah.
just want a marker in my book. There we go.
I don't have it in mind.
That's good. One, each one has to have
One's
one.
good.
But of course, the books that are unused will be behind. They won't be on chapter 14.
Did you fall asleep at home?
Send her a text.
I was trying, yeah, I answered you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
sure.
saw that. Yeah, Father, I didn't want
Yes, Rose thought I was trying to get this thing going, and she thought I was texting you. See where you were.
Did you shut that
Because
off?
this morning you said
No, I'm saying
Bye now.
generator go.
There you go.
Hello there. Chris Bernica, Eileen Rainey,
Oh, nice.
and Agostino Romana. There we go. Bye now. You can see our lovely plumbing
Oh.
about that.